The words misinformation and disinformation are part of our regular conversation today. We deeply understand what happens when local communities, our neighbors, our colleagues, our families, our friends are misinformed. The studies show that when local residents, the civically engaged, are informed by trusted reporting and accurate data, they're more likely to vote and to connect with those around them. They're less likely to be politically polarized. Local journalism is part of the solution for healthy communities and a healthy democracy. But the landscape of local journalism has changed.
All of us have noted the decline in traditional media's reach, the increased power of social media, the rise of mis and disinformation, and the evolution of media technology. We've lamented the shrinking of newsrooms, the blurring of the lines between news and opinion, noted the rise of the shift of ownership of traditional media from persons to corporations to institutional investors and now hedge funds, each step taking us further and further away from a balance between commerce and mission, from owner to reader or viewer. Yet at the same time, we've seen the growth of news deserts in America. We've also seen plenty of green shoots and that now feel more like a movement, a trend toward local, independent online media, and the beginning of private philanthropic support for the idea that this democracy does not work if citizens are not reasonably well informed.
Investigative journalism holds our lawmakers, our businesses, our community leaders accountable. Across South Florida, reporters have shed light on critical issues local residents might not have had the platform to elevate. Local journalists have kept power in check. Reporters have confronted large corporations and state leaders, exposing how they wield power.
And why local? Because we believe trust in society needs to be repaired.
The most powerful public service journalism is grounded in trust.
Local news is verifiable. Sitting in my office in Miami, I can't know if what I'm being told about Afghanistan or Brazil is actually what's happening there. But when the Miami Herald reports on highway construction on I-95, I know it's true because I can see it and I've gotten stuck in traffic there. Local builds trust because we're close enough to feel connected, close enough to know what's true.
Investigative journalists in South Florida have used their reporting to drive change on behalf of residents.
Are you guys okay? Is there anybody with injuries?
Are you there? I'm receiving a 314 now. A building collapse at Edie and Collins.
34. I'm scrambling here. It's not a mess.
Last year, on June 24th, South Florida experienced one of the most tragic events when a 12-story beachfront condo in Surfside collapsed in the middle of the night. While the horrific event was covered by reporters from around the country who came, reported, and left, local journalists are still here examining what occurred at the Champlain Towers South, exposing the little we still don't know about the accident, but more importantly, revealing the minutiae of the event and protecting their communities with robust and meticulous reporting. It is this type of public service journalism that the Esserman Night Journalism Awards wants to spotlight in South Florida, encouraging investigative journalists to keep searching for answers and hold the responsible parties accountable. In its third year, the awards have received an impressive 47 nominations across a multitude of mediums and from a wide range of local outlets. Coverage included stories and major investigative projects within and beyond the Miami-Dade, Monroe, and Broward counties in South Florida, and included some Spanish-language pieces that served the bilingual community. These nominations featured journalists from legacy media, independent digital outlets, and even a student journalist. These works brought topics discussed on the national stage, including climate, law enforcement, COVID-19, housing, and politics, down to a local level that protected and informed South Florida residents.
en el que les muestro las consecuencias que no vemos a plena vista.
You may recognize some of the events covered in South Florida which received national attention, such as the Surfside building collapse, killing 98 people, and revealing a neglect of building safety codes throughout Florida, the assassination of the Haitian president, and the racist tactics of canine attacks on nonviolent crime by the police force. These investigations also reveal the corruption within big companies such as Florida Power and Light's monopolistic hold on solar power and state politics, pushing their power over individual cities and their local laws. These journalists have helped their neighbors in the reporting, from providing a checklist to check on the safety of their own condo buildings to creating legislative change and influencing public opinion. The awards received their first ever student nomination. FIU's Valentina Palma spotlighted the water contamination from sewage seeping into Park View Island Canal, where locals swam and watched manatees, pufferfish, and other aquatic life. Her reporting revealed decades of neglect and lies and influenced ongoing litigations against the city of Miami Beach and forced the closure of the unsafe canal. Her reporting, as well as all of our nominees, strengthened the South Florida community and paved the way for change.
Black or white, gay or straight, red state or blue, who cares? All that matters is we are going through something, and maybe if we help each other, we might all get through it together.
The Esserman Family and Knight Foundation also feel it's important to recognize a journalist each year who has been known to challenge and bring new perspective throughout all of their work. This year's honoree is Miami Herald columnist Leonard Pitts Jr. In a career spanning 43 years, Pitts has an extensive resume as a columnist, college professor, radio producer, lecturer, and what he considers his official job title, a writer. After receiving his initial Pulitzer nomination in 1993, Pitts eventually won the coveted award in 2004, a mere 3 years after his article responding to the 2001 terror attacks will go forward from this moment, which catapulted him into the national spotlight. His work has challenged issues of race, politics, and culture, and has served as a voice for underrepresented communities in South Florida.
And I write a column that appears twice a week in the Herald and a bunch of other newspapers around the country. And my job is to find stuff that matters to me, and I would hope to those who read about it, and to give my spin, my take on what's going on in the country. And I always say that my major theme is how we, as human beings, as Americans, treat one another across all of our fault lines of race, of gender, of sexual orientation, of geography, of education, how we treat one another, our humanity or inhumanity toward one another. That's, for want of a better term, that's my beat. That's what I report on, and that's what my column is about. There is a sense of pride, of ownership, when a story happens in your town that achieves national notoriety. Because what you are compelled as a journalist to want to do is to get it first, to get it best. And you saw that with the Miami Herald, with the Surfside collapse, definitely. Everybody came in from everywhere else, but doggone, these were our people, our audience, our area, our town. And so you saw the Herald mobilize in a way and with a ferocity that other people simply were not going to do because of that. Because, we take pride in covering all the news, but we take a special pride in being the news source for our town, our region, our area. As a columnist, what I'm always trying to do is to find the universal in the specific. So, I work for the Miami Herald, though I haven't lived in South Florida in some years. But what I try to do in evaluating any given topic for a column is to look for something that is going to speak not just to that place and that particular event. We can still own what it is that's going on in our backyard, in our region, in our county. And we can still investigate that, and we can still sit on the mayor's house if that's what's required. We can still go through the court filings from the county commissioner or whomever, or we can still question the governor aggressively. We still have that mandate, and frankly, the need still exists. So that's where the shrinkage, the shrinking resources, that to me at least is where they need to be concentrated. But Miami is the future. Miami is the future culturally. Miami is, more diverse than much of the rest of the country, racially speaking, and in other ways. Miami is more Spanish speaking than the rest of the country is at present. So a lot of the trends that the Census Bureau has been telling us about for a long time are at play and have been at play for a long time in Miami. Miami is the future we see also with regard to climate change, which is a frightening thing considering the daytime flooding that's going on there, and the fact that they are having to raise buildings in South Beach, in Miami Beach, to keep them from being flooded. Keep the Atlantic Ocean from taking them over. Miami is a laboratory of the future. My feeling is that as journalists, you're sort of on the front lines of this question, of covering this question of whether or not we, the people, can get it right. If you can figure it out in Miami and in South Florida, then you can figure it out anywhere. Particularly, again, with regard to culture and with regard to the changing climate. I think if Miami can figure it out, it's a blueprint for the rest of us as Americans to figure it out. So that's the great hope, the great challenge of covering the news in South Florida. You're watching the future being born.
Local public service reporting empowers communities. The Honorable Mentions this year not only addressed issues that other parts of the country are tackling, like persistent racism and dismantling the power of big corporations, but also give back control to South Floridians by providing them with the tools and information to protect their homes and families.
I received a call about 3:30 in the morning from a friend and also a source, two separate individuals, telling me that the president of Haiti had been assassinated, that he was dead.
Through a public records request, I I'd known that there was a bill filed that had to do with limiting rooftop solar expansion in Florida. And in the process learned that the bill had been drafted by Florida Power and Light. The bill was then filed virtually word for word by the legislators that sponsored it.
Our paper decided to take more of a systemic focus and to look at how municipalities in South Florida were addressing building safety outside of just Surfside itself.
And what happened by and large was that they would use them to chase somebody that stole a bicycle or some other property crime where there was no threat of violence. And we also found that that was happening more often than I'm sure the public would appreciate.
At the Miami Herald, Haiti for us is not a foreign story. It is a local story. And when I say local story, it's that we cover this country the same way we cover, another important community here.
So when people were furious at FPL in Northwest Florida, they were able to understand that it was FPL that was behind this bill to undermine rooftop solar. And as a result, they launched a big campaign to get the governor to veto this bill.
What our reporting ultimately found were major lapses in terms of oversight for building safety in South Florida. We were able to produce records from a number of different cities which showed that in some cases buildings had been out of compliance on their safety inspections for decades in some cases.
84% of the people that the police sent the dogs after were Black. That is hugely out of proportion to the number of Black people that live in Broward. And then 64% of the cases were just property crimes. They were not violent crimes.
This award, and it's also a testament that, this is a country, this is a community that is not invisible.
We need eyes and ears on everything that happens here, because I think it has a ripple effect on who is chosen to make decisions for the future, not only of this state, but this nation.
And without local media, with the support of organizations like this, these are stories that are never told.
assassination has left Haiti in a power vacuum.
Advocates say those factors are precisely why police should stop unleashing canines on people.
Could something like Surfside happen again? Anywhere in the country? Anywhere in the world?
En enero del año 2017 tuviste un accidente cerebrovascular.
Así es.
Ese primer día que amaneciste en el hospital y te diste cuenta de dónde estabas y por qué estabas, ¿qué pasó por tu mente?
Y tuve suerte también, ¿no? Estuve acompañado de un círculo de amigos que, estando en el peor momento, recién salió de cuidados intensivos, se unieron para ayudarme, ¿no?
In March, the journalism world lost one of the greats, a pillar of Spanish investigative journalism, both in South Florida and also in his home country of Peru. Enrique Quique Flor, who was known for championing against corruption in Miami, co-authored Condos de Pesadilla, or Condo Nightmares, with Erika Carrillo and Brenda Medina, which uncovered massive fraud and corruption, resulting in a bipartisan bill that changed state law regarding condominiums.
I would describe Quique as a hardworking, very caring, and dedicated. He is somebody who basically, you wanted to emulate. He was very, very much into doing the right thing for stories, for the people, and for the readers. He was somebody that deeply cared about what he did and deeply cared about the subjects that he covered.
Quique was always somebody who could, kind of run interference for us. It's like if we had to get a comment from Mayor Carlos Hernandez or Julio Rabina, we would go to Quique because they would never talk to me. He disarms you because he's kind of got this very sweet, kind of soft way of speaking. He's got a sense of humor. He's always kind of got this sparkle in his eye, and he's got this little smile. And, he really has a way of getting people to open up to him because he's instantly likable.
Quique was just one of those people that you knew at the Herald. He introduced himself to everyone who joined the paper. He offered to help with whatever he could. His goal was to make people feel comfortable.
It was more than that. He had his heart in it. He had his soul in it. And this, stemmed from his years as a younger reporter in Peru, but it carried over to his, experiences here in South Florida. And because this is just such a Latin community, he blended right in, he fit right in.
He deeply cared about the work and really kind of showing what the city was doing and the community itself. Like he really cared about that. That's one of the things that really stands out for me is what he did for in Hialeah.
But really what came across in his reporting, wasn't just the intellectual side, the analytical side, the sources, the official record, the documents. It was his heart and soul. He was committed to it.
He's taught us that basically investigative journalism is what matters and what counts, because that's what makes the difference really for the community. And his dedication to that and the hard work that he did with that is something that we all can, emulate and know that no matter what, he wanted the stories to be told.
This most definitely is intended to have a chilling effect on any city who would want the flexibility to approach police work in a different way.
We could pave the roads with gold, but somebody's going to complain about the glare.
13 years earlier, the Florida legislature passed a law saying no city can raise the minimum wage.
I don't want to be caught on record voting to repeal the prohibition of the firing of guns in our Parks and Recreation system.
This is Tallahassee Takeover from WLRN News. I'm Danny Rivera.
South Florida is a very diverse and unique community. However, the WLRN newsroom noted that the state government kept finding ways to limit local authority. Reporter Danny Rivera took on this massive long-form project to do a deep analysis of the ways political power in Florida was manipulated to hoard control at the state level, spanning from environmental effects from cruise ships to sunscreen. Local governance is foundational to a functional republic, and Rivero's podcast bring public awareness to this threat to democracy. Danny Rivero, welcome. Congratulations on this award.
Thank you.
Tell us about Tallahassee Takeover.
So Tallahassee Takeover is an attempt from us at WLRN, I host it, to bring attention to the fact of really what's going on under the surface in state government. We have a Republican-controlled state government, and we have a lot of cities, a lot of counties that want to make decisions about different things. And increasingly, a lot of decisions are being taken away from local governments, and they're all being funneled up the chain to the state government, which is a little bit ironic because it's Republicans running the state government. So we're looking at kind of the irony there.
And why did you think it was important to tell these stories on a podcast?
Well, we wanted a place where we could go in depth about all these things and all their detail and the history and reading back through documents from decades ago sometimes and really just giving it room to breathe, beyond the time clock that we have on broadcast media. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have this many minutes, you can't go past it because then you got to cut to something else. So this really gave us the opportunity to just let it breathe and let's tell it fully and as completely as we possibly can.
What goes into the production of one episode? I can imagine it's a ton of work because you really have to transport the person that's listening to have the visual aspect of it, the images. I mean, you can't be supported by photographs or by videos.
Well, the writing is definitely different because you have to write for the ear. You're not, you can't refer back to the previous paragraph. You don't have the visual cue. So yeah, the ordering of things is very important. But when I put together an episode, really the first thing I do is I just read a lot. I read through what happened in Tallahassee. Sometimes it's, decades ago or a long, long time ago, just to understand what brought us to where we are now. The last one that we did very recently was about healthcare in Florida and public health, I should say. How decisions about public health get made, which has come to the forefront in the COVID-19 era. And what we found was basically almost every decision about public health, which is infectious diseases, vaccines and whatnot, they used to come from the local level. And all of that got shifted up to Tallahassee. So we explored how did that happen, why did it happen, and what are the ramifications of that now. Probably one of my most favorite episodes was about minimum wage.
Tell us about that.
Which really hits a lot of people in the pocketbooks. It's an important thing. But the Florida legislature years ago said that any local government cannot make their own minimum wage. They all have to go by whatever is set at the state level, which is interesting because you have places like we use in the podcast, Miami Beach, where the cost of living is pretty high. And then you have places in Okaloosa County where the cost of living is very low, actually. And we have a huge state, and these two very different places are all governed by the same minimum wage. So what we explored in that episode is how it actually led to a backlash because Miami Beach couldn't raise their own minimum wage. So then people got together in the more expensive parts of the state and they said, okay, well, if you won't let us do it, we're going to raise it for the entire state. And they were successful in doing that.
Do you think that it's your duty as a journalist to expose these types of situations where the state might be abusing its power?
I would say yes. I mean, there's a lot of people looking at the Florida state government, and there's not always a lot of people looking at local governments and what local governments struggle with, what they're able to make decisions about. And, a learning thing that I've gone through in making this podcast is there's a lot of decisions that local governments would like to make about very pressing problems, and the elected officials sometimes feel like they can't make those decisions because that's been taken off their plate. So they're enabled to respond to what people in the cities are telling them that they should do.
And what can journalists do also to make sure that local governments can reclaim that power, and also residents, because obviously they're the ones that are being affected by all of this?
Well, local government is one of the most important forms of government we have. I mean, in our media ecosystem and our cultural ecosystem, it's like all the conversations first go to the federal government. That's just what people think of. Maybe you get some state government in it, but it's very rare that you get regular average Joe citizens knowing what's going on at the city level. where things are, according to our federalist form of government, it's where things are supposed to be happening. So, you know, as journalists, we can really just help people understand what's going on in cities and counties, places that are very close to where you live, where you see an elected official riding the train or on the, you know, at a meeting, you cross paths with them. You don't get that same thing all the time with federal officials. And you were mentioning that through your reporting, you've had a lot of thank yous from maybe some people that you wouldn't have expected. And an interesting thing that I found in this podcast is I've had calls from elected officials at the local level, regardless if they're Democrat or Republican, telling me, thank you. You're helping us out. This is a real problem. You know, there's a real feeling across the board in local government that they can't do the things that they want to do. And they say, thank you for helping bring some light to this. Local governments are paying attention. And I've been told by some people in some local governments, city governments, for instance, that, you know, this is a real problem. There is things, they feel like they have to tiptoe around the state to make decisions about things that they're doing, you know, in fear that the state will come in and like slap their hands and say, no, you can't do that. And especially in a state like Florida, where we depend so much on tourism, and it's like that battle between this industry and the locals that have to live here and be here day to day. What have you found with that? Right. Well, the first episode of the podcast we did I did it with my colleague Nancy Klingener. It was about that. It was about Key West, which is, you know, 25,000 or so residents, and they get over 1 million visitors a year. They have a real impact on quality of life by tourism and the kinds of tourism they get. So they started really a grassroots effort to have a say in that and to say, we only want these kind of cruise ships coming in. We don't want the biggest, you know, most polluting cruise ships. They wanted to shape it into something that they could do. And they organized a citywide petition. They got it on the ballot. They passed it overwhelmingly. And the state turned around and they said, you can't do that. So situations like that really calls into question, like, what is democracy? Like, what do we have here if the people that live in a city like that can't have a say in what's going on? And that is a question that you will keep posing. Thank you so much, Danny, for being with us, and congratulations again. Thank you. The Esserman Investment also supports the Esserman Knight Prize, an annual fellowship for an early career investigative reporter at the Miami Herald. This year's fellowships were awarded to two individuals, Ali Pichon and Rosemary Izaguirre. Miami Herald editor Casey Frank shared some of their successes this year. Ali Pichon has had quite a run in her Esserman year. She was a part of the team that covered the breaking events that occurred on June 24th, 2021, when the tower fell in Surfside. It was a birth by fire, but her body of work was much deeper than that. Her year also included two major takeout projects that revealed unscrupulous moving companies pulling expensive bait-and-switch maneuvers, victimizing people moving to or from Florida. Her Herald resume also features a powerful story that looked at how a woman was shot directly in front of a security station at a South Florida hospital. She uncovered that there were no consequences for the guard assigned to the station when he just ran away due to a strange provision in the security contract that said officers had no obligations to protect hospital visitors or patients, only staff. Her byline is also on a story that looked at how the sons of Gus Boulis, the slain owner of the Miami Subs and Santa Cruz casinos, are just now coming of age, and how their late father's best friend has plundered their inheritance, leaving them with little or nothing, and again without consequences. Her investigations and her storytelling have helped hold powerful people in this community accountable. Rosemary's role is a bit different, while she also does street-level investigative reporting like Ali. She is a savvy producer of motion graphics and interactives. She is currently designing a dashboard that will include the data necessary to track the various markers that tell us how affordable or not South Florida has become. And this will become a collection point for the Herald's affordability stories.
Her contributions for interactive graphics, maps, and data visualizations were key to 2 national award-winning projects this year, including a penetrating look at COVID vaccine inequity in Latin America, and a project called Offshore Funds Flood Florida Affordable Housing on how Florida's real estate market is being overinflated and making purchasing a home nearly impossible for many people. Rosemary's understanding of data visualization, maps, and graphic design is exemplary and has built more approachable journalism for the Herald and its communities. Allie and Rosemary are not just bringing talent and energy to this established publication, but are infusing the newsroom with vigor and life. As local news resources are dwindling and a free press is under attack, this next generation of journalists are brave, smart, and capable.
Is anybody there?
Doorbell and fires already around on the ring.
Is anybody there? No. The building collapsed.
Almost a year ago, on a sultry summer night, all hell came raining down in the town of Surfside. Champlain Tower South, a 40-year-old high-rise condo, collapsed at 1:22 in the morning, crushing 98 people, mostly in their beds. A Miami Herald team rushed to the scene. Amid the shrieks and sobs of survivors and witnesses, reporters and visual journalists posted updates throughout the frantic pre-dawn hours. Sunrise revealed a grim, smoking hellscape. Journalists poured in from all over the world, then gradually filtered away. That first day, the Miami Herald's I-Team was issued a challenge. Tell us why. And they delivered this explanation beautifully using 3D models and interactive mapping that are entrenched in deep research. We now welcome the Miami Herald, Ben Konark and Aaron Leibowitz. Thank you so much for being with us and congratulations on this award. Tell us about your interactive reporting on the subject.
Sure. So we had been reporting on this topic for about 6 months when the interactive came out. And the idea behind it was to have one place where our readers could kind of engage with all of that reporting. A lot of it was visual. There were a lot of computer models, photographs that we wanted to show people. So it's also a lot of information to process at once. Mm-hmm. So the good thing about interactive is it gives people a chance to kind of go at their own pace and take their time because there's a lot to digest.
Of course, and this was after so much reporting. You published this piece on December 30th, almost 6 months after that initial collapse. Tell us about that process.
As Ben mentions, this was the result of months of intense reporting. We worked with engineers who really walked us through the way structures work. And we talked with witnesses, we talked with survivors who really allowed us to understand this building, down to the minute details. And I think the fact that we had spent so much time working on this over several months and had been in the community really allowed us to put this together in December.
And we know that Surfside received national coverage, international coverage. How was your reporting unique as local journalists?
Well, I think, one of the benefits that the local newspaper brings to this type of event is that we are already in the community. We're not, starting from the scratch, the day after the collapse. So our reporters had sources connected at the city level, at the county level, and it enabled us to kind of, uncover things that may be a little bit quicker than other news organizations.
In the hours and days right after the collapse, I know a lot of us spoke with family members who were just, desperate to know what had happened. And I think that was what was so difficult initially was, through this search and rescue mission, there was a lot that was unknown. People were trying to keep up hope. And so, I think as a newsroom, we did a really good job of, being sensitive and being thoughtful with the families that we were interacting with, being honest about what we knew and didn't know. And as investigative reporters, from there, our job was really to say, okay, how can we try to get them answers? being understanding that this is really difficult, but also understanding that their knowledge and their understanding of this building and this situation is going to help us get closer to understanding why this happened.
And unfortunately, we've seen that throughout the whole country, there are less resources for local newsrooms, for investigative teams. Have you felt the pressure having to put together these pieces that are so important to these communities, to these people, and still having to work with that idea in your head?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a challenge for sure. We used to have a newsroom right down the street, and we don't have one anymore. We had to work out of a hotel room, in the first couple weeks after this collapse in Surfside. And it was actually the first time a lot of us had seen each other since the pandemic. So, that's definitely a challenge. On the other hand, the Miami Herald's still very committed to local journalism, and we actually hired one of the most qualified engineers out there. There's trade-offs. We obviously don't have the resources that we used to have, but we're using everything we have left to try to tell this story. And when it's a story that rises to this level of importance for our community, we know that is kind of our main calling, is to make sure that we rise to the occasion.
And it's so important. A year later, what else do we know about Surfside? And do you think that the response was adequate as far as local governments and state level?
I think there's a lot that remains to be seen. At the state level, there has not been much done in the way of condo reform at this point. Some people expected more to be done in the past legislative session. At the local level, there are efforts being made. I think part of why this is challenging is because it was such an unexpected sort of once-in-a-generation type of event, and people really want definitive answers on why it happened. There's a federal investigation that could take years. Our investigation, revealed a lot in the way of design and construction and maintenance flaws. We know that there were a lot of flaws in the way that this building was designed and maintained over the years. And we have, worked really hard to get a better understanding of how this could have happened.
Were the residents aware of those flaws?
I would say that the residents were aware of some flaws, but there was certainly no awareness among any residents that we know of that the flaws were so serious and that could amount to such a catastrophic event like the partial collapse on June 24th. It's important to realize, like, in the world of apartment buildings and engineering, the worst case scenario prior to Surfside that most people had in mind was something like a parking garage ceiling caving in, maybe ruining a car, God forbid, hurting someone. The idea of a progressive collapse that would take down half a building was pretty unheard of. When you're talking about reforms and stuff, a lot of what people I think are struggling with is how to make sense of such a unique and horrific event and kind of extrapolate that out into, okay, well, now what do we do with all the rest of these condo buildings on the coastline that we have question marks about? How much is the right amount to respond to an event like this?
Definitely. And so this is, of course, something that we're going to be reading much more about from you both. So thank you so much for your reporting. What impact do you think your work has had on this community?
I hope that our work has been able to provide desperately needed information to survivors and family members who went through this. I think a tragedy like this, there's nothing that can undo what happened or, bring back these people who died in this tragedy. But, the best that we can do is go, all out to try to provide answers. I hope that we've, contributed in that way.
I mean, I think Aaron had the exact right answer, which is that, the ultimate measuring stick for us is the community's reaction, and especially the survivors. So when we got notes from people who lost loved ones in the Surfside collapse, thanking us for the work we did, that's the ultimate gratification that we get out of this. There's no one law that we're lobbying for, no one change that we have in mind. What we're trying to do is illuminate what happened to the best of our ability, and help bring some closure to people whose lives were upended by this.
And you were able to do that. Aaron and Ben, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public service reporting that is well-researched and entrenched in the community develops empowered communities by ensuring awareness and accountability in their neighborhoods. The Esserman family proudly celebrates and uplifts outstanding accountability reporting across the South Florida community. Started by Ron Esserman, 3 generations of the Esserman family have come together carrying the mission to serve our neighbors.
Hello, I'm Charlene Esserman, the head of the Esserman family. My late husband, Ron Esserman, and I established the Esserman Night Annual Prize and Lecture to celebrate the important and ongoing role of journalism in maintaining a free society. This is our 3rd year supporting this important endeavor, and our goal is to sustain this endowment through the future generations of our family. We hope to continue while involving our 4 children and our 9 grandchildren. Thank you.
Thanks, Mom. I am Lisa Esserman, one of Ron and Charlene Esserman's 4 children. Our family is more determined than ever to help secure a future for investigative journalism. We started this journey 3 years ago with our endowment of support for local journalism, which enables fellowships at the Miami Herald and the Esserman Night Journalism Awards ceremony, which is what we are celebrating today. 3 generations of our family have been committed to and engaged in this project, and we have been enlightened by reading the submissions. They cover so many issues affecting our community, many of which have national importance. This awards process has engendered lively discussion and brought us together as a family, which is what our father had envisioned for us. Journalism has a broad reach. It exposes so many different stories that bring attention to important causes worthy of support. We all know that our democracy is fragile and is being threatened. A free press is essential to our freedom, and it all starts at the local level. We have been gratified to hear that the attendees of our previous award celebrations have learned so much. Their excitement about local investigative journalism and the buzz around these awards increases every year. This shows us that we are contributing to an informed public, which is one of our main goals. We encourage others to join us in this rewarding endeavor, and maybe it could even turn out to be a great family activity, as it has been for us.
As we approach the anniversary of the Surfside building collapse, it has been so clear the impact of local investigative journalists who tackle issues of injustice, suppression, corruption, and create connections between their neighbors. But local newsrooms are shrinking, and trust in news is at an all-time low, threatening our democracy. When we support and amplify local reporting, we protect our freedoms and galvanize our communities to create change. you.